Sure, we want to start now. Okay, so you should also go into your presenter mode now.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, it is 7 o'clock, so I think we will go ahead and get started. To honor everyone's time, welcome. This is Principal Searle. Welcome to our community meeting for our Term 2 Reopening Strong. I'm happy to have everyone join us tonight. I am letting everyone know before we start, we are recording this meeting so that we can post it on our website to share it with people who are unable to attend. So we are offering a live meeting tonight, recording. So all of our attendees will be on mute, and we will be using the chat feature with a moderator for questions, and we will pause periodically throughout the session to address some of your questions. Any questions that aren't able to be addressed in the hour we have, we will be grouping them and creating an FAQ document that we will post tomorrow along with the meeting recording. So thank you so much for that. And we'll go ahead and get started. Before we go into our presentation, I do want to talk about the lottery and staffing. As you may know, DCPS Central Office ran the lottery for in-person learning on Friday. And today, our staff made almost 75 calls to people who received seats. So DCPS prioritized all seats according to children who were at risk, which is based on a family's economic situation, or families experiencing homelessness, English language learners, or children who have IEPs. And I am pleased to say that we were able to meet the demand for all of those prioritized areas, except for a few of our EL learners who are on waiting lists, and that is due to the numbers in those specific grade levels. But all of our families who meet the other prioritized categories were offered a seat at Ross. So we are grateful for families who are making decisions quickly. As you know, you do have 2 days. So anybody who is still undecided as of today will need to decide by Wednesday, and then we will need to move to the waiting list so that we can give other families an opportunity for those spots. As far as staffing goes, as I have previously noted, we are unable to share any staffing information specific to which teachers will be teaching what grades, whether they're live, whether they're virtual. We don't have that information yet. Due to the Public Employee Relations Board ruling in favor of the WTU, all of those staffing communications from central office human resources have been put on hold. I do know the WTU and DCPS are still in negotiations. In fact, I heard from Ms. Uriga, who is the WTU rep for the teachers at Ross, that they are still negotiating and hoping to maybe have some information to share with the teachers by tomorrow. So the teachers all had an opportunity, all teachers, all staff actually in DCPS had an opportunity to complete a survey, a staffing survey, to indicate whether they plan on applying for any of the federally protected leave that people are entitled to, such as ADA, FMLA, any of the COVID CARES leaves. And Human Resources has to go through all of those applications and make staffing determinations. So until we know what the human capital is in our building, we're unable to really move forward with more specifics for you. So I know that is something that people are eager to know. You all love your teachers dearly, and you want to know who is going to be teaching your children in term 2. And we appreciate that, but we just do not have that information at the current moment to share with you. And as soon as those staffing determinations are made and communicated to our teachers from Human Resources, we will then be able to move forward and share that information. So I will, and also I should point out that we are not receiving any extra supplemental staffing for reopening schools. So we are expected in our building to reopen and offer the in-person and still maintain the virtual with our existing staffing. We do not have any CARES classrooms, so there will not be any other outside people coming into our building to interact with the children. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So important things to know. I know many of you have heard from me about immunizations. You must be up to date by November 9th to attend in-person learning, and you should be hearing, I know you've been hearing from Nurse Gordon and from me or my staff about that. And then at Ross, we are offering one pre-K class with 10 students, the kindergarten class with 10, and those are class size limits set forth by the Department of Health. We did not select those. And then in grades, in grades 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I just caught a typo. I apologize for that. Those classes will have 11 students in each. And as I noted earlier, we're not having any CARES classrooms due to limited physical capacity in our building. And as families accept and decline seats, Ross staff will utilize the lottery waiting list to fill classes. So please, if you have your immunization paperwork, please send it to Ms. Green in the office, or if you want to bring it by Ross in person, Officer Woodley is at the front door every day by 8, and you can drop it off in person to her. Term 2 is going to begin on Monday, November 9th. We are going to be offering staggered entrance directly into the building between 8:15 and 8:45. And once we know who is returning in person, families, you'll have extra meetings, and we will be going over how arrival and dismissal will work in greater detail. It is our current plan that we will be opening a second entrance, the entrance that is over where I usually park on the other end of the garden, in order to have socially distanced staggered entrance. We are still waiting on staffing guidance for that. If we have 2 people from the Department of Health coming to help with entrance, which includes temperature checks, then we'll be able to open 2 entrances. If we don't have that additional staff coming, then we will probably go back to 1 entrance. When children arrive, and I have some pictures later in the presentation of what this will look like, you will stand in a socially distanced line, and you will wait to be checked, and then you will proceed directly into the classroom. And at the end of the day, we'll have a staggered dismissal starting at 3 that hopefully we'll be able to do effectively in 30 minutes. So of course, some of these times may be adjusting as we see how long it is taking to bring children into the building and dismiss them safely. None of us have done this before, and so we will be trying our best, and then we'll probably be making some adjustments once we are reopened. Wednesdays across the district are half days. Children will receive lunch, but it will be lunch that they will take home. It won't be, they won't be eating at school, and dismissal on Wednesdays will be between 11:30 and 12. We are not requiring uniforms. It will be free dress. We do not want families to have the economic impact in the middle of a year when kids haven't been in school to have to go and purchase uniforms. This is what a day will look like. It will look schedule-wise probably like a typical day when your children have been in school in the past. In the morning, though, the arrival is going to be different, as we talked about the designated entry points with the health screening and temp checks. We will have PPE available. Children and families will be expected to be masked when they come onto the school property. And we will have extra masks at the gates and entry points for people who need them, for children and adults. Breakfast will be free for all, just like it has been in the past, although this time it will be eaten in the classroom. And then the children will have their morning lessons. Lunch will be in the classroom. We will be offering recess with lunch. And recess, we will make sure that the children are kept in their own cohort. There will not be mixtures of cohorts at recess. So for example, 2 different classes of children will not be interacting together on the field. We will have scheduled days when they will do that, so they'll stay in different places on the playground and field with their cohort. And then in the afternoon, they'll have their afternoon classes, and then we'll have dismissal staggered by time and by multiple entrances again. This is an important slide for materials. If you currently have a DCPS issued device from the school, you will bring it back on November 9th. Children will need their devices in school because some of their classes or some of their services may still be virtual. Again, that depends on the staffing provided to us, but there may be times of the day when children will need their device. And so those are going to be brought back to school and kept at school, and DCPS will be providing us with headphones for the children who are back at in-person learning. Pre-K students will need a yoga mat and small blanket for their rest time. All students will need a water bottle. The drinking fountains are currently turned off due to COVID restrictions. That also means our bottle fillers are turned off as well. And so my current understanding is that bottled water dispensers will be brought in from the district for children to fill their water bottles. And again, if that guidance changes, then we'll get back to that. They haven't been delivered yet, so more to come on that. The students are going to need to bring back the supplies we distributed to use in school. So those wonderful bags of all those supplies that the PTA generously funded at the beginning of the year need to come back. We spent well over our typical budget for beginning of the school year startup supplies in order to have children have individual supplies for use at home, and those will need to come back, and those will then become their individual supplies in the classroom, since we won't be sharing common supplies like we've done in the past. And we just do not have the funding to purchase everything again double, all the workbooks and all the materials again. So it's really important to maybe, if you're coming back, start sort of gathering some of those items up, because they will need to come back to school with your child. And then, of course, if your child does require medication at school, please reach out so that Ms. Gordon can ensure that she has the proper paperwork from your medical provider so that you can have those medications come in with your child. We know that this has been a really stressful and traumatic time for everyone, for the kids we serve, for families, for our teachers. It's just been very challenging. So we wanted to name that helping our children be supported and feel supported socially and emotionally is definitely on the top of our staff members' minds. And we do understand that a transition is going to be challenging for all the kids. There's going to be a transition possibly with their classes in terms of which of their friends might be coming to school in person and who is still going to stay home learning. There might be some transitions with staffing as we work out our human capital capacity. So I did want to name that this is on our minds. We have a full-time social worker, Rachel Clark, and she has been providing us with supports for transition. In fact, she's got a wonderful parent workshop that is at 8 o'clock tonight, right after this session. And she's also been providing teachers with resources, and she does meet with all students once a week for SEL classes, which is really special. That is not happening at all schools. So children are having that once a week session with her, and we are fully implementing the Peace of Mind curriculum this year, which is teaching mindfulness. And we also feel that the small cohort model for transitioning kids back in person is going to be very supportive for children to feel very known and seen in that small class. And I think Mr. Offerman, do you want to pause there for some questions?
So as of right now, I don't have any questions posted in the chat.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Great. Well, we will just keep moving them. And I'm so sorry. I have to apologize. My dogs are going a little crazy. If anyone is hearing this barking in the background, I'm really sorry. That the joys of working from home, right? Okay, so let's talk a little bit then about operations and design. And this is a slide you may have seen from the Reopen Strong website or from the most recent presentation from the mayor and the chancellor from last Thursday. So we are busy right now setting up the physical space in our building to have social distance arrangements. So the custodians are working on placing floor decals and signage, and we are moving furniture around to ensure that we have adequate spacing for children to have individual workspaces in the classroom. We have some COVID-19 health signs throughout the building as reminders in English and Spanish. We have plexiglass tabletop dividers for the security area. Officer Woodley's area has moved up to the front lobby by the front doors. Many of you, if you've been dropping or picking things off, you've seen that. So she will have a plexiglass divider there. And that is really helpful when we have people coming and making deliveries, when we're receiving mail or the food for meals or our Amazon packages and whatnot. And then we do have a good supply of cleaning items coming in. Some are provided from DCPS, and then some are provided through our PTA funding. I want to give a shout out to Helen, our PTA treasurer, because she has been helping us secure many things that are in low stock right now as schools across the country are trying to reopen. So she set up different accounts for us, business accounts at different places, and we are trying to secure all that we need to keep the building safe and clean. We will also have a health isolation room. So in addition to the nurse's office, there will be another space on the lower level that will only be for health isolation, so that if children or staff come to school and they're exhibiting any signs of illness or fever, if they don't pass the temp check, they will be held in the health isolation room until a parent picks them up, or in the case of a staff member, you know, hopefully they're well enough to take themselves home, or they might need a pickup as well. But that will be separate from the health suite, because the health suite still does need to be available for children who may need an asthma inhaler, or children who need, who need a little Band-Aid or have a, little scrape at recess. So those will be two separate places in the lower level for health. And there will be a health professional provided from the health department to staff that isolation room. Here's an example of an upper grade classroom, what it's going to look like for students. So you will see there's some tape on the floor, spacing out places for the kids to social distance. You'll see that the desks are separated in rows and they are all facing the same way. There will not be collaborative table spaces. The students will all be facing the same way. And you will see classrooms with either 10 or 11 desks, since that is the class size limit. Here's a sample arrival setup, and this is what it's going to look like when your children come into the building. They're going to have socially distanced stickers. You're going to see hand sanitizers on stands, and you're going to see small tables that have some masks and gloves if necessary and some cleaning wipes. So when children enter, for us on our street, and once this is all set up and closer to opening day, again, we will send out pictures more specific to Ross. So when children enter, they will line up, and then one at a time, they will be called up for their health screening and temperature check and brought in, and they will go directly to their classroom. Parents and visitors will not be allowed into the building. So parents will not be accompanying their children into the classroom. They will need to remain outside, and Ross staff members will be making sure children get safely to their classrooms and get checked in. Okay, I'm going to pause here for a minute because I am hearing that the chat feature does not seem to be turned on. Mr. Offerman, do you think you can look into that?
Yes, so I got a text about that, and I am going through and trying to figure out how to turn it on right now.
I am so sorry, folks. We are working hard. I thought it was very strange that there weren't any questions. I'm so sorry about that. And we really tested everything out before the meeting. So I'm going to pause for a minute. I'm going to give Mr. Offerman a minute or two to try to see if he can figure that out. Any luck, Mr. Offerman?
I think I know how to do it. I'm just trying one thing, and I think I'll be able to get it to start working.
Perfect. Thanks for your patience, everyone.
Okay. I think I enabled the chat. If somebody could try typing a message for me.
Do we have it?
It seems not quite yet.
Oh.
So sorry, everyone.
I'm sure some of our industrious raw students probably know how to help. I wonder if they can help people at home.
Yes, so I'm still working on it.
Okay, well, while you work on it, I'll keep going, and then hopefully we'll get it fixed at the end. And if not, then we'll just have to do some Q&A from the floor, and then we can just take some questions via email and to do an FAQ. Sorry,
that sounds good,
folks. So for sample arrival setup, this is what you'll see outside, either one or two areas at Ross to bring the children in safely. So many people have asked about the cleaning and routines, like how we're going to keep children safe and what the different routines are going to look like. The daily health screening is the Ask Look protocol and temperature checks. At this time, DCPS is not doing testing for staff or students before they have a right to come to school. We have a lot of PPE. We just got a second very large delivery on Friday, so we have plenty of masks. We have communicator masks for children with special needs. We have face shields for staff. We have gloves and a lot of hand sanitizer and cleaning supplies. The reduced class size and keeping children in cohorts is going to help minimize the impact of close contact with other folks. We have the adjusted routines of how we're staggering arrival and dismissal and having our meals in the classrooms. We will have additional health professionals in every room, and we will have a modified visitor policy, which means we are not accepting any non-essential visitors, and any essential visitors will have to schedule a visit at least 24 hours in advance. For HVAC, I've shared with some of you, and I'll share again, we are currently at the point where our HVAC is still not repaired appropriately, so we do not have an HVAC report yet to share. Once the system is repaired and up and running, there will be a report. I shared the HVAC explainer with everyone in email yesterday, and I will send it out again. I do want to be really clear with everyone that, you know, our building is not going to reopen if our HVAC does not pass the inspection. If it does not meet the standards and they are not able to get it running in time, they are not going to open buildings that are not safe. I just had that commitment again today from central office. So we are going to keep hoping and working that they get everything up and running. There's also going to be some plumbing flushing out plumbing systems as well. But the contractors have been in the building working on the HVAC, but we still do not have a final report from them. I've had questions about what happens if a teacher tests positive for COVID. You'll see in this example that if a teacher tests positive, the students in that classroom and the teacher and any staff who work in that classroom will be notified and required to quarantine for 14 days. The entire school community will be notified that there was a positive case, and then DC contact tracing will take over. We don't do the contact tracing as DCPS teaching staff at Ross or school staff, but that's when DC Contact Trace Force and the health department will take over. So there will be notification and there will be a class quarantine. Likewise, if there's a student who does test positive, the same, there will be an expectation for a 14-day quarantine. And again, the entire school community will be notified that there was a positive case. And at that point, I was going to open it up for questions. So since our wonderful plans to have a chat feature with our questions was foiled due to technology, then let's go to Mr. Offerman. Are you able to manage unmuting so people can raise their hands and we can take some questions that way?
So I actually cannot unmute attendees at this time. I welcome anyone to email me their questions at daniel.offerman@dcps.dc.gov, and I'll be happy to read questions out. I'd already emailed some people who had reached out to me, so feel free to send questions. I realized when we were creating the event, we did not enable the Q&A feature, which is the issue that we ran into.
So I can definitely rehost the event tomorrow as well with the Q&A feature for folks. I'm so sorry that we're foiled by technology. Ms. Shuriga, do you have it? Are you on the call? Or sorry, she can't answer me. Oh my gosh, I was going to say.
She is on the call.
Okay, so Ms. Shuriga's on the call. So I think if you also email Ms. Shuriga, maybe she can coordinate questions as well, and we can try to discuss some of the questions that folks have.
Sure. So I did get 2 questions in my email that I'm happy to share.
Great.
One is that there are 12 kids in the 5th grade. Will one of the 5th graders be left out?
Yes, that is a great question. I have been advocating for being able to invite all 12 of our 5th grade students to in-person learning. Unfortunately, that request was denied due to health department guidance for class sizes. However, I think we can expect in every class that there will be some families who do choose to continue on with the virtual learning for their children. So I'm hopeful at the end of the day it will all work out. But that was definitely one of the things first and foremost on my mind when I saw those class size numbers. Absolutely.
So the second question that I have is, parents were told that in small schools with only one class per grade, there may be just one teacher for both remote and in-person instruction, and the teacher would somehow have to do lessons both ways. They wanted to know if you were aware of that and how that might look.
Sure. So we are, being in a small school has its blessings and its curses, right? And we now know that if we are to bring back 7 grade levels, which is what we offer at Ross, one class in person for each grade level, that is 7 teachers. And then we know if we also need to keep offering virtual for 7 classes, that's really running 14 classes when we're used to running 8, only because, we have the 2 kindergartens. So we are definitely going to be stretched for human capital in order to run in-person learning and run virtual. So once we have our staffing allocation and we know what our staffing looks like, who will be on leave, who will be working, who can come in the building, who's still virtual, we are then going to have to creatively find a way to manage our in-person and our virtual. Some of the options are that teachers can be expected to simulcast and teach in person and also teach their class virtually. That is happening across the nation in many, many school systems right now. There's also, if you have multiple teachers on a grade level, like we do for some grade levels, if it works out that both of those teachers are able to work, one teacher could be assigned in person and take the in-person class, and the second teacher could take the virtual class. And then we also need to look at all of our staff because everyone is certified as a teacher. Our specialists have extra certification. We might have to look at creatively having some of our specialists help out and support the virtual classes. And so that means we're all going to be very flexible with our scheduling in order to meet the needs of the children. But I think we all do need to be prepared for being flexible and creative, because at the end of the day, we are not being assigned any additional staff, and we do need to make sure that all of our in-person classes and all of our virtual classes are still covered with instructors.
Excellent. So if a student has a temperature or shows symptoms, what is the protocol? And what if a student's parent or a close contact, like a babysitter, tests positive, but the student has tested negative? Does the student still need to quarantine for 14 days?
So for the first question was, if a student comes to school and maybe doesn't pass the temperature check or develops a fever during the day, then that would be up to the school nurse and the health department to follow the health protocols, whether it is the child is in the isolation room and the parents are called to pick them up, or if the child, is first in the health suite, maybe the child said they didn't feel well and then, they're moved. But that is going to be up to the health professionals in the building. The second question, I will have to get more technical guidance on, because I think if there would be a case in the home, I think there would have been contact tracing involved and health department reporting. And so that is something that I can definitely follow up on. I do want to flag for people, and I have also, we've been talking about this at central office. We need to really be aware of the states that Mayor Bowser is adding to her list of states where if you travel there, you need to quarantine for 14 days when you return back to DC, especially with the holidays coming up. We are concerned if people are traveling into those areas for Thanksgiving. that people really need to be mindful of the quarantine responsibilities. So I think we are really trying to advise people who are choosing in person, and of course staff who are assigned to in person, that we need to be careful about our travel now that we are going to be back in the building.
So this question was asked a few times, so just to word it easily for Principal Searle to answer, if children miss days or are quarantining because of a positive test, would they be able to log on for distance learning during those 2 weeks?
That is a great question that we need to still work out. I do know if the entire class has to quarantine for 2 weeks, and that they're all back home, that then that class would do virtual learning with their teacher since they would all be home quarantining. Of course, that is hopefully expecting that the teacher is not too ill to teach. If the teacher is ill, then of course the teacher would take his or her, legally protected leave, and then we would probably have the children join the other virtual class or rejoin their virtual class. But yes, we are, I think, are going to be facing all kinds of these situations. And every time I go to a different meeting at central office or meet with a group of principals, like we think of more interesting scenarios like this that we're probably going to have to face, right? And each one might be a little unique or different. But yes, we absolutely want children to be safe. If they need to be home due to illness or quarantine, we want to help support them to continue their learning. And we know that we can do that now because we are figuring out this new virtual world of learning. So yes, we will have to cross some of those bridges when we come to them.
So 2 closely related questions. Will there be changes to the virtual learning schedule for term 2? And will there be changing for access to the playground?
Okay, so the virtual schedule for term 2, what we need to do, and again, I hate to sound like I'm a broken record, but once we know what our in-person staffing looks like and our human capital, we are recognizing that we are going to make some shifts to the virtual schedule, probably with the specials, those intercourse specials, only because we have to schedule for recess and lunch in person, and we did not schedule for recess and lunch virtually. Clearly, we just put everybody on the same lunch schedule virtually, but we can't have everybody on the same lunch and recess schedule in person because we need to have cohorts separate at recess, and so we have to work around that. So that is probably going to create some movement in the special schedule. So we'll have to be a little flexible there. To think about how we might have, because some of those specials now in some grades are bumping right up against lunch or recess. So we are trying to work through that. But in terms of the basic, core academics, those things should not be changing for kiddos virtually, but there will be some changes probably in the special schedule for the most part. And then of course, some of the small groups are going to change only because if your child is currently in a small group virtual with 3 other kids who happen to be going back in person and they're not, we're going to be then regrouping children for instruction based on whether they are, which class they're in for virtual or in person. And then playground. Yes, the other one was playground. Yes, the playground access is going to change. When schools reopen November 9th across the city at the elementary level, DCPS runs closed campuses during the school day. And so the playground access is going to be closed now, just like if we were in our old way of being in person all the time. And so because we need to have it available for our in-person learners, for their recess, for their physical activity. We will be receiving some tents from DCPS, so we will encourage teachers on nice days to be outside. We definitely want our pre-K children outside as much as possible. We're currently thinking of maybe reserving the garden space for that group so that they have a group and they're not going to be impacted all the time by their recess groups. So we are thinking through that, but the actual playground will be closed now during the school hours, and then it will be open freely after school. I see many of you sort of during the after school time when I'm leaving every day.
Excellent. So another question we have that is coming up quite a bit actually is for specialists. It was said that specialists may have to teach virtual learners, and so they want to know if hypothetically would a PE teacher be assigned to teach PK virtual learning?
You mean pre-K phys ed or general?
Yeah, I believe general specials.
You know, that's really going to depend on what our human capital is, and it's going to depend on all of those individual teachers' certification areas. But we will still be offering children their intercourse specials. Children are going to get the music, the art, the world language, the phys ed, you know, the SEL that they're getting now, as much as is possible.
Great. So
I just had a question come in
sure.
about what happens if we don't have enough in-person staff. So let's pretend that if we don't have enough in-person staff to support 7 live in-person classes of instruction, then we will not be able to offer all those grade levels. So that is currently happening at some other schools where they just know based on the amount of leave that's been granted some staff that they might not have an in-person teacher at first grade. So if there is no in-person person with the staffing and credentials to teach a certain grade level in the school, then the school's not able to offer that grade level. And then I believe that option would kick to a CARES classroom model because those can be staffed with employees from outside the school. I have not been led to believe yet from staffing that is something that is really on the horizon for us right now. But then again, at any time, you know, people can apply for ADA anytime. They can apply for FMLA anytime. Those are, you know, federally protected entitlements people have a right to apply for leave. So if at any time that happens, like again, we're going to have to pivot and regroup and cross that bridge when we come to it. But I do know there are instances where if you don't have the staff, you know, I mean, we just have so much human capital in the city, and that's what so much of this reopening is really depending on, having enough human capital in our buildings. If we don't have enough, then we cannot open at the full scale that the plan demands, and we will have to open, you know, to be safe at whatever our current staffing is going to support. We're clearly planning for 7 in-person classes because DCPS ran the lottery for those 7 classes. So, you know, I have no reason to believe that won't happen. But again, you know, this is something that's not in my control.
So another common question that we're having is, was this reopening plan something that DCPS did by itself, or did Ross have a voice in the reopening plan?
I missed the first part of that. I'm sorry.
That's okay. A question that we've had asked several times is, for the reopening plan, is this something that Ross was a part of helping create, or was this done by DCPS entirely?
So I'm not really sure exactly who. I'm thinking, you know, there were probably a number of city agencies involved in terms of first safe reopening. I'm sure there was the health department with guidance for the mayor. I'm sure the mayor's office. I'm sure DCPS, probably the deputy mayor of education. I don't really know. I mean, what I do know is that the plan was announced to all of us on October 5th. And, you know, that I believe most of us started the school year thinking that if we were looking at reopening, we were going to have that hybrid model, right, of the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays off, and then Thursday, Friday. So, you know, I think that this new model did surprise many of us because it was, you know, I was not in any planning committees for it personally, but I can't really speak to if other principals in the city or other, you know, education leaders from other areas of the city were involved. But individual schools are not able to make their own individual plans for reopening. Since we are part of DCPS in a public school system, we need to follow the guidance from the central office district. Unlike charters who can maybe make their own, you know, plans independently, as long as they're keeping with, you know, health department guidance. we don't have that level of autonomy at all with this.
Excellent. So related to that, there was a question regarding the prioritization of students with IEPs and 504s in the lottery system. And it is, were only IEPs prioritized in the lottery system or 504s as well?
Correct. So the prioritized areas in the lottery were children, families who are experiencing homelessness, at-risk families, which is linked to economic situation, students with IEPs, and students who are English language learners. Students with 504 plans were not in that prioritized group.
Great. So the next question that we have is, if you did not receive a DCPS device and you're using your personal device for your child's learning, will they need to bring that device to class with them for in-person learning? And if so, how often?
Great question. No, you only need to bring a device back if you have a DCPS device. We are going to make sure, in fact, the city is going to make sure that we have enough devices for every child who's back in the building for in-person learning. So we need the DCPS devices back only if your child's coming to in-person learning. If your child is staying virtual, they will keep the DCPS device. And children are not expected, nor are they permitted to bring their own personal devices to school.
Great. So another good question that we have is, are all meals packed, or will there be hot lunches offered again to our in-person learners?
My current understanding is that the meals are going to be packed. I don't, typically a lot of our food, because we have such a small kitchen, it's sort of brought in like semi-prepared, and then sometimes it's sort of heated up, or, some things are prepared on site, but we don't have a large, full scale kitchen. My understanding though is that because the children are eating in the classroom and the food is going to be brought up to each classroom, the children are not even going to be traveling down to the cafeteria to get food. They will be taking a bag or prepared meal from delivery right to their classroom from a food service worker. So I hesitate to say that it is going to be hot, but I will definitely double check on that.
Excellent. We did have someone ask if Ross would have any CARES classrooms, and I can answer that quickly. Ross will only have our in-person learning classrooms, no CARES classrooms. Another question that we do have for you, Principal Searle, is some concern about the first grade, with Ms. Eminger being the only teacher. And while she is doing a fantastic job, there's some concern around her having to be in-person teaching as well as taking care of virtual learners. So just a little more clarification on how staffing might work in that regard.
Sure. So we have that situation with pre-K 4 this year at Ross, with first grade, with fourth grade, and fifth grade. So for those 4 different grade levels, we have to figure out if we have the staffing capacity to support the virtual classes, or if the teachers are going to need to teach their classroom live and simulcast, right? Both at the same time. And we absolutely want, as much as possible, to figure out a way to hopefully schedule in enough human capital to support that virtual learning. But at this point, until I know more about what that looks like in terms of availability of staff, I can't really answer that. But that is definitely on all of our minds, right? I know, including Ms. Imminger's, and we do have a very robust class size at first grade. For those of you who do not know, we have 33 first graders this year. So we are definitely working on that, but we do have that situation right now in 4 different grade levels. We have 2 kindergarten teachers currently, we have 2 second grade teachers currently, and 2 third grade teachers. So hopefully if that staffing works out for us, then we know that we could accommodate those in-person and virtual learners with the existing staff if things work out for us.
Excellent. Another great question that we have is, how are movement breaks or movement within the classroom handled?
In terms of brain breaks, perhaps?
Yeah, Yeah,
Yep.
brain
So,
breaks.
yep. So we're so used to doing our morning meeting with kids when they're together on the rug and they're doing, special handshakes and greetings. So we will be teaching kids non-contact greetings. We were working on some of them actually even last spring virtually, showing different ways to do that. We will have to, teach children how to stay in their socially distanced spot and stay in their area. And we can definitely do some different standing exercises and stretches and crossing of the midline moves in the classroom. We have also talked about perhaps using some of the recess time because it's going to look a little different for kids, right? I mean, our kids are used to being together with other grades at recess and playing together, and they're going to need to stay separately in their grade level. So we've talked about even trying to maybe offer more structured opportunities for them that they usually don't have at recess, such as maybe a yoga group or, something that's a little different for them, that feels special so that they're not pining away for something they can't do, but they're trying to lean in positively to something that's a new offering.
Great. So related to that is with simultaneous teaching being the option for several of our classrooms, what is the technology that we have to ensure that our remote learners can participate?
Right. So I do want to point out first that it's not the option or the only option. It is one of the options, one of the items on the menu. So if that comes to pass, then the district is securing the necessary technology we need. And then part of those days in November, before November 9th, first day of school, is going to be to train teachers on that. So the district is securing whatever necessary technology schools need to do that.
Great. Another question that we do have is, in regard to our related services, such as OT and speech, there is some questioning around, will that be in person or virtual?
Yes. So my current understanding from the Division of Specialized Instruction, which is the office down at Central that manages all special education and related services, is that speech and social work services and psychologist services are all going to remain virtual for children. And that's even if staff are assigned to work in person in a building, because staff could be assigned to report back to work in person, which would mean they could at least help with some supports in the school, like arrival dismissal, giving teachers their lunch break and whatnot, but they could still be directed by their department at Central to offer their actual services virtually. And so I believe for those services, they're going to remain virtual. And OT, I believe, is going to be in person because clearly occupational therapy is really not ideal virtually on a computer for kids. But my understanding is because many OTs are shared between multiple buildings, they cannot travel between multiple buildings because it would be too much cohort exposure. And so they will be assigned possibly to the building with their largest caseload. But I don't have firm guidance on that yet. As you can imagine, so many departments are working out so many of these situations. So I'm not sure about that yet, but I did learn from Miss Picard, our current speech pathologist at Ross, that she was notified by her division that her services were to remain virtual for children. And that seems to make sense if you think about, for those of you whose children do receive speech services, if you were in person with the speech teacher, you'd both be wearing a mask. Whereas when you're getting your services virtual, at least you are not masked and you can see each other's mouths, which is so important, an important part of the service and therapy.
Okay, I'm just double checking to make sure that I didn't miss any significant questions. So I did have a question just come in, which is just a little more clarification on for Ross in terms of the lottery selection. Did we have any ability to put some input into things such as only the possibility of one of our fifth graders being left online?
Yes, as I previously noted earlier in this conversation, I did ask for an exception to the class size guidance, which was determined, my understanding, from the Department of Health, not DCPS. I did ask for an exception if we could bring back all of our students, because we just do have a class of 12, and that was something that was not approved due to the fact that we were told we were limited to just 11 children in a class. But like I also said, based on my current knowledge and interactions with a few families, not only in fifth grade, but across the school, we've been reaching out to everyone about their offers, and there are a number of families who are choosing to remain virtual with their students for a variety of reasons and factors, and that is always an option for everybody. I do want to remind everyone. And so I am hopeful that it will work out, that anyone who wants to come back in fifth grade will have a slot, and will still be balanced out with families who maybe do not want to make that choice right now for their learner.
Another good question that we had was because of that 4.5-day schedule with that half day on Wednesdays, how is that going to affect our virtual learners Wednesdays?
Can you repeat that again?
Sure. There is a question about how the new schedule, in terms of there being some teachers teaching in person and some being online, would this have any effect on the Wednesday virtual schedule?
It could. I mean, Wednesday is a lighter day for live instruction. So depending, on how the small group compositions change from grade to grade, that could impact some small group instruction, because some grades are seeing some small groups. And also depending on how the special schedule changes, the art, music, PE, inner core, that could shift on Wednesday a little bit as well. Because Wednesdays are going to be a half day for in-person, and Wednesday afternoons are going to be reserved for teacher professional development and instructional planning. I do know that you can expect not to have anything scheduled on Wednesday afternoon, whether your child is virtual or in person.
Great. So a question that we have looking to the future is whether or not there will be another in-person lottery for the beginning of terms 3 and 4 to allow other students the opportunity for in-person classes.
I do not have any guidance yet on terms 3 and 4. That is a great question. I'll definitely take that back. I think we're gonna try to figure out how to do this in term 2. And I do know that the mayor and DCPS really want to try to bring our older learners back in term 3 as well. So I don't know. I guess we'll have to see how things go, right, in terms of the health metrics in the city, and if any guidance changes from the Department of Health around capacity in buildings or class sizes. I really don't have any information on term 3 and 4, but I will definitely see if there's any out there in the works. And it's 7:57, Mr. Offerman, so I don't know if we have one more, and then we probably should wrap up. I know we've got Mrs. Clark, our social worker, has a parent workshop on SEL, social emotional learning, and helping to transition your children positively in term 2 at 8 o'clock. And I know the PTA executive board's meeting too.
Great. I do have one last question in here, which is about, are students able to access the fields who are not enrolled in person during the school day?
No, they are unable to do that during the school day, because then we would be out of our number, ratios, and then that would be like considered cohort mixing. So we're not able to welcome our children back during the school day if they are on a virtual schedule, but they can come after school.
Great. So we do have a few questions left over, but I will make sure to send all of those to Principal Searle so she can get together an FAQ to go along with the recording of this meeting.
Thanks so much, Mr. Offerman, and thank you everyone for your graciousness and patience as we navigated our little snafu here with technology. I'm so sorry about that. And I do hope that everybody felt like their questions were addressed, and we will create an FAQ document. And then this recording will also be posted on the Ross website tomorrow for everyone. And then we will have another meeting scheduled for next Monday night. And then as more information starts rolling out and things start shaping up, we will have additional meetings as necessary, because we are going to need to spend time, especially for kiddos coming back on campus, to really help educate and train on some of our entrances, just basic safety operation procedures, so that everyone's really clear about that and children feel confident before they come in. So more to come. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.